everybody. Welcome to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation. My name is Jason James. So I'm quite brief today, but there are three other speakers scattered around, well, the UK and Japan. And I'll give you the timeline next, and then I'll just introduce our chair, and I'll leave it to him to introduce the other two. So it's a bit complicated today. But that was my greeting. So then Nick will take over as chair. We'll have two presentations which will become increasingly interactive, a kind of discussion with Nick. And then towards the end, we'll have a Q&A session involving the audience as well. So this is Nick Luscombe, who's chairing today. He does a wide variety of things in which I think sound and perhaps Japan are the common thread. So he's a broadcaster, collector of sounds, a producer. He is based increasingly in Tokyo, and that's where he is at the moment. From 2010 to 2019, he presented the Late Junction show on Radio 3. This year, he's been working for Tokyo FM and CIC Live in Tokyo, and is also working with Tokyo University on a project which I think he calls Soundscapes of Japan. So I'll leave it to Nick to add anything further he wants to that. Over to you, Nick.
Thanks very much, Jason. Yeah, so I'm sort of in Tokyo at the moment, as Jason said, and very much looking forward to this webinar today. We're going to be exploring design and sound during lockdown. We're going to be exploring electronic music in all its forms and club culture as well. We're going to be obviously thinking about how the pandemic has affected everything in club culture and in electronic music. So I'm really looking forward to this. And obviously there'll be a chance at the end for you to ask any questions as well from our panelists, who are Yuri Suzuki, who's an incredible mind for sort of all kinds of sound design and sound experiences, and somebody who I've known for a long time who's been making some really innovative musical instruments, for example, and someone who's a really interesting person when it comes to electronic music in all its forms. And also Gemma Curtin, who has put together the wonderful, I wish I could go to it myself, the Design Museum's electronic from Kraftwerk to the Chemical Brothers exhibition, which is on at the moment, and will be ending obviously on Thursday, but then we'll be back again, and we'll talk more about that as well. So yeah, looking forward to this. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. This has been really well attended, so hope you're going to get a lot out of this. We're going to start off with Yuri, who's going to give us a presentation for the next 15 minutes or so. So if I could now just hand over to Yuri Suzuki.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, so basically, I'm really looking forward to today's session. Basically, Nick and also Gemma, we have been working during lockdown time, and I'd like to share kind of as a sound designer, kind of my opinion about how soundscape should be. And then let me share my kind of presentation now then. So, like a brief introduction. My name is Yuri Suzuki. I'm working as an artist and a designer and a musician. There's not much boundary between this categorization. And I belong to a company called Pentagram at the moment. They're kind of like a large consultancy, design consultancy firm, but I'm doing really a sound-based work I'm doing it. So I just briefly want to discuss my opinion about what is sound design. So I think definition of the sound design came from furniture music, which is original composed by Eric Satie. He treated music as a part of the sound landscape of the house, and it's called music called furniture music. And then reflecting to that, I'm longer time my kind of research about what a soundscape should be and how we can redesign soundscape. I just want to show one example. So So this is basically kind of categorized on the like YouTube. I found this video like most annoying alarm clock in the world. So I think something I'm interested is kind of like past couple of decades, like our environment in terms of like design and also materiality of the design and also technology, and has been like dramatically improved. But in the same time, like design itself hasn't been, sound design itself hasn't been like developed enough. That's my opinion. That's kind of my starting point for starting this project of redesign soundscape, and also thinking about what kind of sound suit for our environment. That's kind of like a definition of the my like sound design. And then thinking about like companies like Apple Computer and a big company has got a evolution of the technology for like past, like again, like past couple of decades. And again, like design and also like functionality and also interactive design and also technology has been like developed like significantly. However, if you're listening like evolution of the Apple Computer, for example, like it doesn't really change enough. So if you can see, like one company stick onto the kind of quite strong sound identity, they never change like sound content for like long time. So basically, since like iBook was kind of developed, like basically hasn't been like changed enough. And also same as Nokia as well. I respect this company. They have got a lot longer time to like developing beautiful interaction design functionality on this product. But same time, like sound itself hasn't been like evolutionary changed enough. Again, like some company like stick on the one strong identity, they never change for 10 years. And actually, initially, this like music really came from beautiful composition by like a Spanish like a guitar composer and a song called Grand Bass. That's origination of this music. So if you're listening like same music again and again, people differently like recognize this music or sound as something like kind of annoying, or like you are getting your nerves as well. And then this is a really good example. Like if you concert for, if you're listening this sound, what's gonna be happen? But at the same time, like some company like considering quite interesting way for the identify the sound, like such as like Microsoft. I wouldn't say Microsoft is like a best branding like in the last kind of couple of decades, but I think recently like Paula Scher, like she did a really amazing design, and however like sound side they considered quite well. And this kind of Microsoft Windows 95 startup sound, one was a quite significant, like well-designed sound. Sorry. And this like quite short song is actually designed by Brian Eno, and one of the kind of very beautiful composed like a sort of like he's reflecting his like a airport like a soundtrack for the airport and ambient music. And I'm just like talking about a bit my environment because if you stick on the house, because since lockdown, you might stick on the house like significantly to compare with the past, and you're caring about what kind of sound coming out from like object and also like equipment and so on. And on the city side, like this public sound design is also quite important. And this is a Dockland rail service in London, which is kind of actually operated since 2004 and a relatively quite new line. But we can hear really horrible sound design here.
This is Cyprus.
This notification sound basically 2200 Hz that actually brutally vibrating your eardrum. It shouldn't be using for public transport. So this is like really about like my like pre like COVID time like research. Like I'm really like considering about what kind of soundscape would be the best. And since like lockdown situation happening, people more noticing about like how like caring about sound these days because like relatively like you stick on the one place quite a long time. And I'm talking about a bit about the designer's attempt in the past. Like, a couple like brilliant designers tried to solving or like as a designer's perspective, tried to changing like soundscape. And this is really beautiful design by like a Droog design, like a bottoms up doorbell, and which was kind of really beautiful design because like once people like kind of and like coming to the door and you push the bell and this bell sound is sound of cheers and we're making really really beautiful sound and related to the bit more like feeling as well because like it's a celebration for someone coming into the house and it's basically kind of like sound of cheers and really conceptually and sound design way it's working really well. And I reflecting, I've just introduced one short project I've done in the past. It's design your doorbell. So I think personalization of the sound is quite important because what's your favorite sound? What kind of sound you want to attach to like your, your own sound like scape. And I invited a couple of like musician and also some designer and also artists creating the individual like doorbell project. And I created sort of doorbell kit, which is back in 2008 in Stockholm. I think I did this like a project. So they kind of created different concept and different opinion for the creating different sound doorbells. And another very beautiful example for designer's attempt by Richard Sapper, who designed the kettle for Alessi in 1982, which has got two like beautiful whistle installed into this kettle. So basically, like any kettle, like once water is boiled, making really squeaky, like kind of high pitched sound, which is not pleasant sound. But he tried to design like a pleasant sound from the kettle. Then I was quite inspired from this project and then created this project called Musical Kettle. So I'm just like more about personalization of your own favorite sound. So when it's water boiled, what kind of sound do you want to like listen? And basically I designed this kettle. So when it's water boiled, like this like cylinder mechanically moving and play back like your favorite music. Obviously, it's not very well designed that time, but that's prototype. But conceptually, like your kettle gonna play like your favorite music when water is boiled. And I'm just like looking quickly about the kind of relation between sound and noise. So like human being like gonna like treat like noise like when like sort of like sound without any order in terms of frequency, in terms of rhythm. But once has got sort of like order in the sound, people treat as music. And I just wanted to introduce this one, but just not much time, so I'm gonna introduce one example. So this is a really beautiful example from Japan. It's called Melody Road. And so kind of a concept for this project is kind of this road has got texture on top. And when the car is driving, it's that texture making like sound and rhythm. So basically vibration tying to the music. So it's really like a beautiful example how like a noise translates into the sound. And also I'm going to talk about the psychological effect and how like music and the sound affect our emotion and the feeling as well. So because I think sound is quite like closest sense to the brain, and which is actually kind of working incredibly positively, incredibly negative. I'm just introducing quite positive effect.
Okay, there she is. She's crying, but then.
So this is kind of like a discovery in the way like so many parents try to calm down baby and kind of using kind of daily objects such as hair dryer or like shower to creating white noise to calm down babies. Because scientifically like baby tend to calm down when like listening white noise sound because which is sound quite similar to inside of mother's body. And I kind of reflecting for this like a fact and created this project called Child Chiller. So basically this is a sort of like a musical instrument when like blew into like this like sphere structure, like tying to the you blew into the kind of white noise, and this like trumpet cone to amplify the sound. So when the baby cry, like using this horn to like calm down baby. And also like interesting fact, I'm not sure if this is really true or not, but it's kind of urban myth. Like this song caused like around 12 people suicide during like First World War. So basically like this song called like Damia, it's a song called Gloomy Sunday. So basically quite depressive song. And when they broadcast this song causing a lot of people suicide. So basically Hungarian government, I think in Hungary, like it basically like forbidden to broadcast this song. So that kind of urban legend, but it's how quite interesting, like how music and the sound influence like humans' emotion. And the song is quite depressing. I just play like a portion of it. And I'm just like move on to another topic because especially like our communication method mainly like working on teleconference, like Zoom probably the most like popular one, and probably start people noticing about kind of an acoustic of your environment you're living in. And this project like we worked with like Nick actually, and kind of part of the like Music City project, and basically brief is kind of a like link with the kind of architect who in some series of a building which never built. And this is a J-pop house designed by Richard Rogers. And then this like kind of musician to reflect into this unbuilt like architecture and how we can tie into the sort of like music or like sound. And my proposal is like once I saw like this structure, it's kind of incredibly interesting kind of structure in here because it's quite wide like structure and quite empty. And immediately thought, what if I can use this structure as musical instruments? And then we start working on a lot of like acoustic calculation of the building, and we kind of made simulation of the software. And if you can imagine like these like red line and the blue lines kind of strings, and if you like any like a music player like actually treat this building as a musical instrument and what kind of music gonna coming out. So I think like I compose music like based on these kind of speculative thought and making like a acoustic simulation on the computer and compose this song. I'm just playing like a little bit because my presentation time gonna be finishing soon. So it's gonna be like around 7 people, percussionist and string, like a musician. What they like treat this structure as a musical instrument and what kind of sound and what kind of composition can make. And basically like this kind of like laser kind of sound is actually like, using structurally making wired, if you're hitting it, making that kind of sound coming in. And also if you have like quite like large kind of string, long like strings line can make really beautiful like resonation we can do. So like once kind of bowing and the pitch card and the percussion section we divided and compose this song. So basically this is around 7 minutes composition, but you can actually listen to like a Music City website. And also like lastly, I'm gonna talk about a bit connectivity. Like we did this project. I think like since lockdown, like suddenly like people disconnected from like society in the way. You had to like stay in the house whole day, and suddenly apart from your family, probably you don't meet anyone. And then actually I got quite interesting proposal I got from like Dallas Museum Art in US, and she actually asked me to like a curator called Sarah. She asked me to create like a website connecting people with the sound. So like I can quickly demonstrate that website. Sorry. Oh gosh. So this is a project called Sound of the Earth, the pandemic chapter. So this is a website, and you can actually submit like sound like through like your phone, like anything, and the recording audio, you can submit into this kind of black sphere. And if you see this dot, it's actually like a recording point. So basically, if you click or like if you go through your cursor, you can hear the sound people submit. So you still have a kind of connection with this world, and you can browsing sound, and you can submit sound, and you're basically creating sound globe map in longer terms. So we started this project since April, and I think around 500 to 1,000 submission, and slowly creating like a sound globe map on the world. So this is really a quick talk, and I hope you get it what I'm attempt to do in sound design, the relation with sound and lockdown. So I'm just hand over to Nick again.
Thanks, Yuri. That was amazing. And so many things I didn't know you did. And I thought I knew a lot about what you do, but there you go. There's just more and more. Thanks for that. We'll be talking to you again. We've got some more questions for you later on. I'd like to now bring in Gemma from the Design Museum in London, who's going to give a short presentation as well. And then we're going to speak to Gemma about the exhibition that's taking place at the moment at the Design Museum.
Hello, hi, I'm Gemma Curtin from the Design Museum, and I'm going to talk about our current exhibition, which is called Electronic from Kraftwerk to the Chemical Brothers. Unfortunately, due to lockdown here, it will be closing this week, but it will be back on in December. So it's about it celebrates the culture of electronic music, from the first experiments to create electric sounds to the sort of global phenomena of electronic dance music today. We've got an incredible range of photographs, art, design to really explore this culture. And this is one of Gursky's rave prints. And I think it really shows that sort of abstract view of the sort of absorption of sound and what sound can really, the experience of sound in a crowd. There are 5 sections in the exhibition. The first one is called Man and Woman Machine, and it's really a homage to Kraftwerk. And it presents a sort of timeline of the pioneers who have created the equipment to make electricity, creating the sound of electricity. And so we show the evolution of the technology of electronic music, from very early pieces like the Croix sonore, which is a type of theremin, to the Imagine studio of Jean-Michel Jarre. We've got a piece by Yuri Suzuki, a collaboration with techno pioneer Jeff Mills called The Visitor. And things like Jeff Mills' Flight Case, which really I think shows that from the technology where you had to carry albums around the globe to a USB stick where you can just travel with a tiny piece of equipment to carry all the music you need. A section on the live AV, we have collaborated with the Chemical Brothers, and really to show that the rich input of all the design areas into the music industry to create the performance of sound with electronic music and synthesizers. It's not very performative. So a lot of other designers, whether it's set designers, costume designers, filmmakers, have worked with artists like the Chemical Brothers or Aphex Twin to create these really dynamic live performances. And these are costumes designed for Smith and Lyle, who do all the live AV for the Chemical Brothers, and they all catch the different light, so all the different shades show that sort of reflective light. And the second section of the exhibition really looks at the dance floor and how it really is some of the spaces where music is experienced. And really at current sort of lockdown, this is one of the places where there is a lack of these spaces where you can experience the effect of music, of electronic music. And we have work by Ben Kelly that shows his design for the famous Hacienda Club that was built in Manchester in the mid 1980s. And I think what's interesting about this club is it was one of the first clubs that really gave a huge amount of care to the interior design. So using street elements, whether it's the chevron or the bollards or cat's eyes, these products that are used for street design, but are using them in the design of a club. And there is a huge area that is devoted to club graphics, from the Hacienda to places like Cream, designed by Farrow Design in Liverpool, and the Designers Republic work for the Gatecrasher Club in Sheffield. And these became these mega clubs, these huge clubs that the design for which was almost like Nike or a big brand. So they stopped being these sort of underground scenes and become places where they have proper identities that are designed by key designers. So this is the wall of club graphics and some of the incredible club graphics that are today. At the centre of the exhibition is the core. The exhibition has a soundtrack by Laurent Garnier that really gives the history of electronic music through 11 soundtracks, for whether it's from New York disco to the Second Summer of Love to futuristic techno. And this is a light sound installation. So the core, it was designed by 1024 Architecture, and it responds to the music. So the lighting changes responding to the different tracks. And it's a really immersive experience. It's a really powerful experience. So the third section is mix and remix, and really is about the DJ and how the DJ makes music from music. And you can look at the incredible skills, but also the fact that today with technology, a lot of DJs are in their bedrooms, particularly at the moment with lockdown, that you can do everything from your bedroom. we've got incredible videos by Richie Horton showing you how to DJ, and famous Chicago DJs like Frankie Knuckles, and also art that is inspired by the notion of the DJ, of cutting, of remixing, of collage. These are all things that artists have been inspired by music. And this is a Christian Marclay, this collage of vinyls, and really also how the vinyl has been incredible creative opportunity for designers, and where there is a sort of sonic and visual fusion. So we've got a whole wall of contemporary designers. So this is for the Hyperdub album, Notel, and it's a collaboration with Lawrence Leck, who has done a sort of an actual simulation, a virtual walkthrough of a hotel, that each chapter, each room of the hotel responds to or represents one of the tracks on the album. So it's how designers are constantly reinterpreting the sounds, and how to give visual coordinated communication to the sound. This is an album by Non-Format for Low Recordings, and they create a bespoke font for every album they create. So again, a new sort of language to the sound. And in the last section, it's called Utopian Dreams and Ideals, and it's really showing how electronic music has been a safe space for people of diverse backgrounds, in particular the LGBT community, how it's also has a political element, how in the reunification of the Berlin of Germany and the taking down of the Berlin Wall, how that created a place like Berlin, which was free for clubs to move in, a lot of space, and it became a real centre for electronic music. And there are artworks and designs that represent that sort of sense of community, but also this the fact that it is the electronic music is the soundtrack of sort of people who have defied authority, and this is particularly so in the late 80s in the UK with the Second Summer of Love, that there became a big confrontation between music lovers and partygoers and ravers and the authorities. This is also shown in, this is a police riot shield that was taken from Occupy London, some recent protests, but made into a smiley face by Jimmy Colty, who was a former member of the KLF. And at the end of the exhibition, we have this incredible experience that has been designed by Smith and Lyle, who do the live AV, the live audio visual for the Chemical Brothers, and this to the track "Got to Keep On," and this is recreated through visual, sound, but also the atmosphere of haze and strobe in the exhibition, and is probably the nearest you'll get to a sort of club experience in the exhibition.
Thanks, Gemma. That's great. And the thing that strikes me most of all seeing that is it's incredibly timely, isn't it? Because with COVID, obviously we haven't been able to go near a club for a long time, but it's almost like, you know, but this was presumably put together before a long time before COVID hit, right? We
were halfway through the install when the first lockdown happened. So luckily we had all the exhibits in place. But yes, and as soon as we were given the go-ahead and put all the guidelines in place, we've reopened. But yes, I think it is reaction from visitors have said it's because clubs and anywhere communal is closed, it's a real, they found it very emotional actually coming to the exhibition. I think it takes on a different meaning in this current times.
Yeah, absolutely. And that must have been such a surprise, right? I mean, generally to get that reaction, because you were probably expecting, you know, a kind of certain reaction, maybe people being a little bit nostalgic and looking to the future, but then for electronic music and club culture to be completely redefined. Again,
I think it's perhaps you appreciate music, but I think people sort of sometimes don't think of all those other elements that help you appreciate music. Those sort of the physicality of a place, the being with friends, the way that music can change in different environments. And I think that really the way that sort of the live AV are so skilled in creating, using all those elements, whether it's set design, lighting design, sort of atmospheric sort of haze and smoke, all of these things to really make the experience more intense.
It's funny, you know, seeing the Hacienda in a gallery, like as you just showed it, because, you know, I went to the Hacienda only a few times, not many times, but I didn't really think about that as a kind of design space. I just saw it as a kind of functional place where I kind of, you know, danced to music back in the day. But what has been the reaction to people seeing the kind of that whole world put into a kind of museum, if you like, or and a gallery space?
It is a very broad brush approach, and I think people are seeing those connections between design and our culture and music, and realizing that all these areas are incredibly connected, but also how key they are to our sort of day-to-day lives, to the things that we find enjoyable in life, and where we sort of meet people, and also where we can be ourselves. Places that allow us to be who we want to be, to experiment, to really sort of, yes, be ourselves and meet people like ourselves.
Yeah, right. And I guess that brings in another question, which is, you know, those kind of safe spaces that you've mentioned, you know, for different communities, and even just the place for people to express themselves, which dance floors and electronic music has been really amazing at being able to do, from a creative to a dancer or, you know, regular club goers. Right now, obviously, that's not happening. So where do you think there's a new way that expressionism is going to manifest itself?
I think it's really interesting. I think we're yet to see sort of how, you know, there's VR and there's all sorts of new technology that you can experience, but it's very hard, I think, to recreate that sense of community, of being with others, of enjoying things together. So I think there's no doubt you can recreate the personal experience of listening to music, but it's that joint, it's that community, it's the crowd, it's the festivals, it's these things that are really very difficult to replace or.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess the other thing that's possibly happening at the moment is that people, since they're not allowed to gather again, you know, in large groups, and that's been not happening for a while, but that kind of mass appreciation of music, and just looking at someone next to you, and when you get it, when that moment happens in a club, you know, it's an incredible thing. But now that's kind of been replaced with a lot of solitary listening, isn't it? So people kind of now are experiencing music by themselves in a different way. And I wondered if you felt that maybe that was shaping music as well, electronic music.
I think it's really too early to say whether what sort of effect. I think, you know, people are sort of are missing the huge sort of music scene, and you know, worried about the financial hardships faced by the current music industry and that sort of unforeseen future. Yes, I'm sure it will have huge effects on people's creativity, but it's difficult to say, and I think just also in terms of music, it's people have rediscovered the notion of silence and the sort of contrast really of the stimulus that they receive, and because there's perhaps less differentiation, it's how to create that sort of sense. And there has been, I think lockdown has really introduced people to the notion of silence.
Yeah, that's true. And the sounds of nature, and the sounds that Yuri was mentioning earlier, you know, the kind of those sounds that are around us in our daily lives that we wouldn't have paid much attention to before, but suddenly they become really central to our lives. You know, those kind of the sound of the kettle or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and also I think like something additional for club music or dance music, because dance music or club music always kind of like created by like environment, for example, like history behind like dubstep, for example, or like grime, which is, dub is basically came from Jamaica, and beat is came from like a hip hop, and kind of basically Middle Eastern producer making melody, and the kind of like Asian person doing rap or something. That's kind of like really coming together to make a new genre. So I just like wondering, like this lockdown time, like could be chance to make like a new movement, a new genre as well. I think that's I'm really looking forward to it, because I haven't really seen like much kind of update since like vaporwave was created in the UK, and hasn't been like done much. So I'm just like want to see some change as well.
Yeah, I mean, Yuri, do you have any ideas what, I know you're a busy man, but if you were going to kind of help sort of direct that, where would it be in your mind? What would you kind of like to happen musically out of this?
Yeah, I think in the way like kind of streaming, like in particular, it's like cannot really dance in the way. Like I think dance music or urban music gonna change like less beat or anything, or more like ambient kind of style music. I think shift into that, because obviously house environment you can play like music loud. So I think that kind of shift could happen as well. But always humans quite creative and do something, find out kind of out of the way what our current problem, I think. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my personal prediction, but I'm still making myself like house music. It's not really
Yeah.
in a particular genre or anything.
Gemma, just thinking about the exhibition again, I mean, it obviously, the title suggests Kraftwerk to the Chemical Brothers, but it goes from way before Kraftwerk, doesn't it, to kind of the origins of electronic music. And I think what Yuri's saying is that maybe we're kind of going full circle quite quickly, that we're going to go, back to maybe something that's a lot more calm, or maybe something almost classical. Is that how you kind of read this as well, potentially?
It's I think it's interesting where people individually are being drawn, and I think it is very much more about the individual and how you respond to lockdown. Within a household, everybody in each different room can be listening to different music and experiencing something different. So yes, but perhaps we do need, in a crisis environment, perhaps it is something more ambient or calming. I think when Yuri was talking about, the psychological effect, music does can make you feel reassured, and perhaps it isn't the time, but then there are different parts of society that need different things. You get a sense that sort of the youth are perhaps being contained a little bit too much, and maybe there might be another sort of second summer of love. There was certainly in the UK some illegal parties during the summer where you felt people didn't want to be contained and repressed. So yes, perhaps ambient for some, but also perhaps sort of angry and fast for others. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to be both, isn't it? It's going to be punk, and it's going to be sort of chill out on the other side as well, and are coming together as well, which is interesting. Yuri, I was going to ask you also about your thoughts on the kind of democratization of music making. As someone who, I've enjoyed to see the way that you've developed kind of musical instruments, and it feels to me that that's quite fundamental to your thoughts, that maybe out there are people, anybody can make electronic music given the kind of tools that they can use. Is that right?
Yeah, I think like kind of related to like a design museum show electronic as well. It's kind of evolution of because basically like creating music can be quite difficult as well. Like you need to learn like music theory, and also have to learn how to play piano or something. Kind of I'm passing like a drop off everything because my background is a bit dyslexic. But once I got like electronic musical instruments such as like a Roland TR-808 or like some drum machines, which is quite evolutionary, quite graphical, and even you don't know any knowledge, you could make some music as well. And in terms of the like a designer perspective as a creator, like I'm interested in what you said, democratic way to creating music. And I think I forgot to present one project I did last year called the Welcome Chorus Project in Margate, basically Turner Contemporary. So that's a platform, any like people coming into, it's basically installation consists of a microphone and people talking to the microphone, basically algorithm is learning what people talked about, what people sing about, and the algorithm to basically kind of creating algorithm based on the people contribute and the kind of democratic way to creating music. So that's kind of things just happening because of the recent technical developments such as AI, so which is quite unique, and also that could be potential for the music making in the future.
Yeah, I'm also kind of curious the fact that there's so much you can do with the computer now, so much within just a basic computer with the software that's already on it, such as GarageBand on a Mac, where you can kind of make a lot of electronic music, but people still seem to be obsessed with physical, hardware and analog technology. Why is that? When things are made so much, so much more simple to kind of make a piece of music on a computer, why do people still get drawn to this?
I think my opinion, is human being need to have inspiration not only from screen or visual base, need to have tactility and also feeling and smell or everything that which is related to increasing your passion to making music in a way. And basically, I'm always talking about lost physicality past couple of decades because for example, music production used to be you need £1 million of kind of equipment producing music, but the evolution of the technology managed to put all kind of technology into the tiny computer screen. However, human being still need to touch something to make something. So such as company like great example, COG, Teenage Engineering. And they have been producing really beautiful equipment and quite mobileable, but still hardware to enjoying to create something, which tactility and as a sense necessary for creation, I think.
Absolutely. And Gemma, is that represented in the exhibition? It seems like so that it's quite tactile, as well as being about electronic music. It's also about the senses more widely.
Yes, it is. In terms of sort of how music and music makers collaborate with other designers to give a sort of more diverse appreciation of their sound, really, whether it is in a club or whether it is with live AV. But yes, and that how these the senses can be used to sort of almost increase the sensibility of each other. So there is something about seeing the visual of an album while hearing the album being played and feeling a sort of almost a parallel creativity that also sort of reinforces the music. And likewise, when you look at a cover and then listen to the music, it seems actually stronger and richer. So I think we need to use all our sensibility, to really, and it's about creating strong experiences, those intense experiences, and so using all the tools that are available, whatever those happen to be. So yeah.
I was going to ask you as well a question about sound generally in galleries and in museums. It seems to me that I guess we're always quite led by the visual, but quite often, you go to an exhibition and the sound is always the thing that's really lacking in a gallery space. This is obviously one of the great exceptions to that. But as a curator, has sound become more important to your work when you're presenting exhibitions, do you think?
It's quite tricky in an exhibition because it leads so easily. So for this exhibition, we've created sort of really robust rooms which are very soundproof, where you can contain the sound. But yes, on the whole, it's wanting as you go along. So headphones are really good like that. You can sort of plug in the exhibition. We have jacks that you can plug into additional sound through your headphones. So you are able to change the experience quite quickly. But yeah, it's and even within, for this exhibition, there's quite a lot of sound lead, throughout the whole museum. I mean, it's a pretty loud exhibition. The soundtrack is incredibly loud, and then you have the additional use of headphones for additional music and sounds. So it certainly permeates the whole of the design museum.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Sounds like a real world situation, right? Like a club or a street. It sounds like that's what happens in normal situations.
Yeah.
So, I'm just thinking, like last year I went to this an exhibition which was all about Harumi Hosono, who was a member of the Yellow Magic Orchestra. And I was thinking again about the technology, a lot of which came from Japan, in the late 70s, early 80s. I was just kind of, again, curious, I guess, Yuri, thinking about that music tech from Japan, has that influenced, I mean, it's beyond discussion that has obviously kind of created loads of musical forms, but how important is it that all that stuff that came from Japan, do you think that if it wasn't for that, we would be kind of maybe 20 years back to where we are now? Or, where else would it have come from at that time, do you think?
I think just back to that kind of Japanese characteristic in a way, Japan cannot do fundamental innovation, I would say. For example, innovation of transistor, for example, what came from US, and they're supposed to be using for your kind of, how that's called, a device to listening for the people has got hearing difficulty or hearing aid devices.
Hearing aid, yeah.
But that was the intent they developed for transistor. But for example, Sony, Japan is very good for modification. For example, Sony imported transistor to making incredibly small radio. That's kind of evolution, I think. And quite similar to electronic musical instruments or some digital gadget as well from Japan. Such a pioneer like Moog, or sequential circuit, they're producing really heavy duty big electric musical instruments. That's revolutionary. However, Japan imported and make it simple and make it cheaper, and that actually express much more people openness for in the world. I think that's actually a kind of value of a Japanese kind of a development. I think that's personal opinion. So in terms of Roland, for example, TR-808, 303 kind of synthesizer to compare to Moog, much cheaper. And there's so many thrift shoppings, and it's not commercially successful. So many musicians bought from second-hand shop for almost penny. But but that's basically creating a new music genre like house music or acid house music. So that is achievement of I think Japan, I think.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? Gemma, I'm just going to ask you the same thing, really. I mean, in terms of the exhibition, do you represent some of that technology as well?
Yes. So we have a few Rolands, the 303, the 707 and the 909. So these sort of bass and drum machines that, as Yuri said, were so influential in the sort of poorer neighborhoods of Detroit and Chicago, the youth who started to create these things which were within the music world considered not that great, but as Yuri said, they were affordable, easy to use, really easy interfaces that were easy to manipulate. And going back to also what Yuri said, that sort of parameters, they had so idiosyncratic sort of sounds, the sampled noises, which actually became a sort of a great thing for them and almost a trademark sound of the kind of techno and acid and house music. So those, what was a reject perhaps in other areas of music, became a sort of a really identifier in the music scene, in the early sort of techno and house music scenes. So they were affordable, as Yuri said, and there's that the whole sort of timeline that we show of the evolution of the technology. It is going from these sort of university or workshops in places like Siemens, Bell or Philips, where they're creating these huge machines, very expensive, but then it's how these were slowly trickled down onto the street and became affordable for sort of music makers to use.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm aware of the time actually, and I think we want to kind of have a Q&A with the audience out there. But just very quickly, Gemma, just if I can ask you one last thing, which is, what's your kind of hope with this exhibition? I mean, it's been running for a little while now, and it's going to pause and then be back again. But what's your kind of what's the kind of the end result of this? Do you think?
It's a really positive experience about the role of music and club scene in our society, and how important how essential that element of our culture is, and how important it is to preserve and support it at this time. And it's great fun. It's great fun, and you can lose yourself in it and just enjoy the moment of being in the music.
Yeah, brilliant. And Yuri, what are your thoughts? I guess you've seen it, but I don't know. I'm just assuming you have.
Yeah. Just me and Gemma has been conversation even starting this exhibition, and we have quite a lot of kind of idea exchange for this exhibition actually. But I would say something brilliant things about it, because this exhibition touring from France actually. But however, I think I can see a lot of Gemma's effort linked with cultural impact of the electronic music, something I really appreciate this exhibition. It's not only a fun dance music exhibition at all, it's kind of cultural context is quite clear. So that actually can see a lot of fragment Gemma's effort put into the cultural context. That's really, really rich, make it rich for this exhibition, I think.
Incredible. Okay. Well, thank you both. I think we've got 10 or so minutes now. I'm going to hand back to Jason, who's going to pick up on the Q&A session.
Okay. Well, I think we're probably running out of time, so I'd better wrap it up now. So thank you very much to all three of you for a really fascinating discussion, and also some great little clips from Yuri of sound. I want to get one of those kettles if I possibly can. But for today, I think we'll wrap it up. And so I hope we can, for those of you who like that kind of thing, we can all get back to actual clubbing in the foreseeable future. But for the meantime, as you can see, I've been in this armchair for the last 6 months, and I expect everybody's getting very fed up with my sumo backdrop. But thank you for a fascinating discussion, and thank you everybody for attending today.